Why did you argue that religious services, religious people pose a greater risk of infection than people gathered to argue for defunding the police? Why did you make that argument? This seems like a strange argument to me, that religious people are somehow, more infectious than folks who have other ideological positions? I don't get it.
My understanding was the nature of singing and other things epidemiologists thought could transmit COVID at a higher rate.
You didn't put any scientific evidence on the record for it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations to all of the nominees. Judge Ali Khan, I think the last time you and I visited, it was before the Homeland Security Committee. And I asked you a number of questions there, including some for the record, you answered those, which I appreciated. One question that I ask you, and I ask every nominee actually on that committee and this one, is whether or not the nominee has ever litigated against a religious liberty claim. Usually the answer to that's no. In your case, you answered yes, and you listed 5 different cases over a period of years actually in which you have litigated against individuals or churches' religious liberty claims. So let's just talk about a few of those if we could. Let's start with some of your work during COVID. Case you list here, Capitol Hill Baptist Church versus Bowser. Do you remember that case?
Yes, Senator.
You remember working on that case?
Yes, Senator.
This was a case involving the district's lockdown policies that shut down churches in the district. Is that correct?
It concerned litigation over provision of the lockdown policies. The policies restricted all types of activity in the district.
All types of activity in the district?
Yes, Senator.
Did it restrict mass protests in the district?
Well, it restricted activities that one normally expected, including work, going to stores. It also did include these provisions that were challenged concerning churches.
So it exempted unusual or unlikely activities that's in the statute, that's in the ordinance?
When the mayor was enacting these orders at the outset of the pandemic, I think she was trying to be as comprehensive as she could, and the order did restrict a number of daily activities of district residents.
But it exempted mass protests?
I don't believe it said anything one way or another.
Can you point me to the text where it exempted mass protests?
I don't believe it said anything one way or another.
Of course it didn't, because it didn't exempt mass protests, right? You know that.
I think it was silent on the issue because I don't believe it was contemplated by the mayor's office.
So you think that mass protests should be in a different category than religious observances? Is that your position?
I think if there were protests on the book, then the mayor might have thought about that when she was enacting the COVID-19 restrictions. But I think she was trying to protect public health.
So you think it's fine to say to religious people that they are prohibited from gathering outside, wearing a mask, socially distanced. They can't do it. But if you want to come and protest, defund the police, if you want to support that, that's fine. You can gather en masse, person to person, close up, thousands of people. That's okay. That discrimination's okay. That is your position?
Senator, that is not my position.
It was your position. It's what you argued.
I did not write these orders. What I said.
You defended it in court. And you just articulated to me what I take to be your position.
What I was doing in the Capitol Hill Baptist Church was defending the mayor, my client, against a constitutional challenge to one aspect of the COVID-19 restrictions. We understood that strict scrutiny applies.
How did that case go for you?
We lost that case.
Why?
It was found that the restrictions did not meet the standard of strict scrutiny.
Meaning they were unconstitutional?
Meaning that they did not survive strict scrutiny. And it's a matter of public record that the District of Columbia did not appeal that decision.
Why? Why were they struck down?
Excuse me, Senator?
Why were the restrictions that you defended struck down as discriminatory? Why were they?
Because they did not satisfy.
Why didn't they?
The court concluded that there were restrictions that were not neutral of general applicability.
Yeah. That's legalese. Why didn't they? Why didn't they on the facts? You know the facts. You were a good lawyer. Why'd you lose?
We lost because applying the strict scrutiny test, the court concluded that the restrictions were not narrowly tailored to serve a compelling governmental interest.
Because?
Senator.
Oh, come on, Judge. Don't make me do this. Do you want me to go through it for you? You lost because Mayor Bowser was going to mass protests herself personally with thousands of people celebrating them. By the way, which is fine. We have the First Amendment in the United States. I want to be clear. That is totally fine. You want to protest? Go for it. I think that's totally fine. That wasn't the problem here. At the same time she was doing that, she was prohibiting churches, religious people, from gathering socially distanced outside wearing masks. And the district court said, you can't do that. That's discrimination. You can't separate people out based on their ideological beliefs or their positions. You can't do that, right? Isn't that what the district court said?
The district court said that
do you agree with it?
Could not survive strict scrutiny.
for those reasons, right? Why are you fighting me on this? I can't figure this out.
I am not fighting you, Senator.
So yes, you agree. That's what the district court said.
That was what the district court concluded.
Do you think they got it right? The district court get it right?
The district court, we did not appeal that decision. I think that district court decision is consistent with rulings that we got from the Supreme Court clarifying the application of the religious test to COVID-19 restrictions in Tandon and the Brooklyn Archdiocese.
My time's almost expired, and I know other senators want to ask questions, so let me just very quickly here. Do you think it's wrong to discriminate on the basis of religious faith?
Absolutely, Senator.
Why did you argue that religious services, religious people pose a greater risk of infection than people gathered to argue for defunding the police?
I was representing my client. The mayor and consulting epidemiologists had issued orders that she thought were going to protect public health. It was my role to defend those as a member.
Why did you make that argument? This seems like a strange argument to me, that religious people are somehow, more infectious than folks who have other ideological positions? I don't get it.
My understanding was the nature of singing and other things epidemiologists thought could transmit COVID at a higher rate.
You didn't put any scientific evidence on the record for it?
Senator, those were fast-moving cases, and they weren't going to full briefing and full summary judgment with a record.
That's not what the district court said. The district court said that you engaged in, and your client engaged in, and you defended discrimination on the basis of religious belief, that you offered no scientific evidence for it, that you pressed these arguments over and over and over without any foundation. Frankly, I'm disappointed that you made those arguments. You can choose what arguments to make. I'm disappointed you made those arguments. I'm disappointed you persisted in defending them here today. And for that reason, among others, I will not support your nomination. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations to all of you. Mr. Clerk, do you believe in stare decisis?
Absolutely.
Tell me what that is.
Is to follow precedent.
Okay. If you're confirmed, will you follow all higher court precedent?
Yes. I pledge to this committee that if I am confirmed, I would follow all Supreme Court, Sixth Circuit precedent.
Okay. Would you have followed the Dred Scott case?
Boy, there are some foundational cases where there
Yes, ma'am.
is...
Let's just start out with the basics.
Sure.
If we could. Would you have followed the Dred Scott case?
As a federal lower court judge, I would have been obligated to follow that case
So
as
you
precedent.
You would have?
If I had been a lower federal court judge, I would have been obligated to do so unless the...
That's a yes. There are only two doors here, yes or no?
If I had been a judge at that time, I would have been obligated to do so, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Would you have followed Plessy v. Ferguson?
Again, your Senator, as a lower court federal judge, if I were to be confirmed as a district court judge, I would be obligated to follow all the Supreme Court precedent. If the Supreme Court determined that there was a precedent that it found that it should overrule, they have that opportunity to do so, but as a lower court judge, I would be obligated to follow it.
That's a yes?
Correct. Correct.
Okay. Judge Ali Khan, am I saying that right?
Yes, Senator.
Okay. Will you allow your personal or political beliefs to affect your decisions?
No, Senator. My personal beliefs have never played a role in the positions I took as an advocate, nor do they play a role in the positions I take as a judge when I'm neutrally deciding a case.
Okay. I'm glad we got that off the table. Let me ask you a few questions about how you view the world. Do you believe that minorities need special help to succeed?
Senator, that issue is currently pending before the U.S. Supreme Court.
Yes, ma'am, but we just established that you're not going to let your personal opinions affect your decisions. You're going to follow precedent.
Absolutely. I will follow whatever precedent comes from the Supreme Court.
So let's talk about your personal opinions, which will be irrelevant to your position on the court. Do you believe that minorities need special help to succeed?
Senator, again, I don't have a personal position, and sitting here as a current sitting judge and as
thought
a
about
nominee,
that? Have you thought about that?
I am aware that we have given preferential treatment. It's been subject to a lot of different court cases. The
Do you
issue,
agree with that or disagree with it?
it's not a question, Senator, of whether I agree or disagree. I
Sure
apply
it
the
is.
law
You're-
as it comes before me.
You're being confirmed to the federal bench, and presumably you're a critically thinking person. I'm just asking you what you believe. Let me ask you one more time. Do you believe that minorities in America need special help to succeed? It's a very simple question.
Senator, to the extent policymakers have enacted laws that provide protections,
Do
I
you
would
agree with
faithfully-
those policymakers?
I am not a policymaker, and as a sitting judge, it is...
You don't have an opinion, or you're just not going to answer. I don't want to waste more time if you're not going to answer.
Senator, as a sitting judge, it is inappropriate for me to
No, it's
comment
not.
on my personal
No, it's
views.
not. We've already established that you're not going to let your personal beliefs interfere with your decisions, so I think you ought to tell us what your personal beliefs are. Do you believe that do you believe in systemic racism?
Senator, again, that's a question for sociologists and academics. I take
You
every
don't have an
case.
opinion. You never thought about it.
I take each case as it comes before me on the individual facts.
What is systemic racism?
My understanding is that it's a sociological theory that racism plays a sort of systemic role. But beyond that, I'm not an academic. I'm not a sociologist. I am a judge, and I apply the facts and the law to the cases that come before me.
Right, but you don't have an opinion.
No, Senator, I do not.
Do you have an opinion on anything you'd like to share with us?
Senator, as a sitting judge, it's inappropriate for me to comment on any personal views I might
No, it's
hold
not.
because
We
I
just
would not.
established, the first question I asked you was, your view of the world does matter. If you never thought about the world, if you never thought about these issues, you're not qualified to be a federal judge. And I think you ought to come here and answer. I think all of you should come here and answer them forthrightly. If I ask you, let me ask you one last question, and I will quickly, Mr. Chairman. Do you believe you sit on the District of Columbia Court of Appeals? Is the District of Columbia Court of Appeals systemically racist?
Senator, as a sitting judge, I think it would be inappropriate for me to comment. I can say all of my colleagues take the cases open-mindedly
But do
and
you
on the
think it's
facts that before them.
systemically racist?
I don't think that it is, Senator, but I also
Okay.
don't know if I'm qualified to give that type of assessment.
Well, you sit on the court, right?
I think all of my colleagues take their cases with an open mind, without any prejudice, and faithfully apply the law to the
Well, I'm
facts.
disappointed you won't answer my questions, but I thank the chairman for giving me the extra time.
Senator Lee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thanks to all of you for being here. Judge Ali Khan, I'd like to start with you. Tell me in one sentence what a judicial philosophy is. What do you think that means?
I think it's the set of principles that a judge brings with them when they join the bench.
How would you describe yours?
My judicial philosophy has three components, Senator. First, the humility to understand that the judicial role is quite limited. Legislatures enact laws, executives enforce them, but the only role of a judge is to apply the law to the facts of the case before them. Second, to make sure that all parties leave my courtroom feeling like they have been heard, knowing they have been respected, understanding that I have been well prepared and asked good questions. And finally, that I issue opinions that are prompt yet thorough and that are written in such a way that both litigants and pro se parties can understand.
What role should the text play when you're interpreting a provision of the U.S. Constitution or federal law?
The text is primary. You look at the text first. If it is unambiguous, that answers the question. That is well settled Supreme Court precedent.
Where there's ambiguity, what do you look to resolve the ambiguity?
So when there is ambiguity, for example, in a statute, you would look to not just the text but the context. If there were, depending on when the statute was passed, looking at relevant dictionaries from the time to understand the public meaning of the words that were used. Also looking at the way those words are used in analogous statutes from the time. Ultimately, once you've exhausted text, context, history, dictionaries, you can look at canons of construction.
But the effort should involve trying to ascertain the meaning of those words at the time of enactment, if a statute, or at the time of ratification, if a part of the Constitution.
Yes, Senator. That's why you look to contemporaneous dictionary definitions.
Thank you. In 2021, you spoke on a panel at an event, I believe, honoring the 20th anniversary of the founding of the American Constitution Society. And in your remarks, you said, quote, "I've been able to think through my job, to carry out and live some of the values of ACS." Tell me, Judge, how did you carry out and live some of the values of ACS as Solicitor General and now as a judge on the D.C. Court of Appeals?
The values of ACS, as I understood them, were education and mentorship, and I try to carry those out both in my role as an advocate and now as a judge to make sure that I'm speaking to the next generation of lawyers, to make sure that I keep an open mind, stay current on interesting debates, stay current on the current state of the Supreme Court cases so that I can apply them faithfully to the cases that come before me.
Okay. And what other values might you refer to ACS? Are there others other than the ones you've just described?
I understand from Senator Blackburn there's a long mission statement for ACS. My involvement with ACS has always been on these types of panels where we're discussing legal issues, on mentorship events, when I'm speaking to the next generation of lawyers, particularly about opportunities in public service. And then oftentimes ACS and the Federalist Society will pair up at law schools to have different issues sort of aired and debated. I loved doing and going to those events when I was in law school, and I love speaking at those joint events because I think you're really getting a way of understanding the diverse perspectives of the law. I think that makes us all better students of the law. Obviously, as a judge, my role is just to look at the law and the facts and the cases that come before me. But for those that are still in law school, those that are exploring careers in academia and policy, I think these are interesting debates to be having.